Hello everybody and welcome back to the Fortress of Solitude. Today we're going to be talking about Superman issue 28 by Joshua Williamson, Dan Mora and Alejandro Sanchez. The Absolute Legion reveal themselves to Superman and Prime Earth as in the wake of his battle with Lex and the separation from Supercorp, Superman gets back to work doing what he does best, helping the people of Metropolis and the world. As he does his job, the Absolute Legion keep an eye on him, finding that he poses as Clark Kent, mild-mannered reporter, something they cannot understand since why would he hide his power? Saturn Girl knows that he inspires many people through his actions, and it's not just on Earth either, but also other worlds. The Legion are glad Superman is so upfront about what he stands for, since they know who to target first. So I kind of wish that this entire sequence, this sort of like, spying on Clark Kent and Superman and all that sort of stuff had been spaced out over a couple of issues. Like, one little page or a couple of panels here and there of the Legion, not even in the foreground of what's happening in the scene, but like just their presence being there and them being like a known entity that they're actively spying on Superman as he does all of this amazing stuff and they're keeping track of him. I think that would have benefited from the last 4 or 5 issues having little things like that just peppered throughout the issues, especially because it probably would have built up the tension a little bit more. They keep seeing things like, oh, they find out he's Clark Kent, they find out he's married to Lois Lane, he has a son, he has a family, like finding out all of this stuff about him, and eventually it comes to a head here where they eventually confront him about it all. As the Legion keep tabs on Superman, he returns to Smallville, digging through his room for his Legion flight ring. Ma Kent soon finds her son, remembering all about the ring and when Clark first found it, and the Legion of superheroes because of it. Ma tells Clark Pa is out of town and Clark can hear him back in town gossiping, something Martha knows has become Jonathan's new favorite hobby. She asks about the ring and the future team that gave the ring to Clark, and he knows that they were more than just a team to him. They were a group that he could just be himself around, and they gave him hope for the future. So it feels like an age since we've gotten a quiet scene with Ma Kent and just her and Clark just talking things out, and I appreciate Williamson for slowing down this rather big stakes storyline enough just to have this moment and just get some classic Ma Kent wisdom in there. Martha can tell that it's more than just nostalgia that has brought her son back home, and Clark tells her it's about his fight he had with Validus during John Henry and Lana's wedding, and how the villain is from the future, but everything about the fight made Superman believe that Validus was running scared from something. He might need to head to the future to make sure the Legion and his friends are okay. Martha doesn't know why he hasn't gone yet, comparing it to one of her high school reunions and how she was so nervous about being there and how everyone had changed and how she had changed, but she still went and she had fun. Clark remembers the last time he saw the Legion and they were very different than what he remembered, since the future is constantly changing and he's worried about how uncertain tomorrow is. So I'm guessing this is how they're going to talk about how over the last decade, we've had various number of different legions, and saying that the future is constantly changing, that's really quite a cool excuse for why they are so different whenever we see them from iteration to iteration. And it's like kind of makes sense. It's a very simple way to get around it without saying, oh, there's all these big retcons or something. And it really is the truth though. The future isn't something that's predetermined, it isn't something that's set. It's constantly changing by everything we do. So it makes sense that the future would be constantly changing and things would shift and people would look different, act different. So it makes total sense, and I love that that's Williamson's little, like, I wouldn't so call it a patchwork, but for a better lack of a term, it's him sort of like patching up like all these different inconsistencies with the Legion throughout the years, because no one really knew what to do with them. Make sure that everything that we've seen in the last couple of years with the Legion is still happening, but also it can also change because the future changes. Martha imparts a great nugget of wisdom here, as the future is never a guarantee, it's something that is earned. So Clark is going to see his friends and he's going to have a good time. Thanking his mother, Clark speeds out of the house into the old Legion tree that has the L carved into it, which was set up a long time ago so Clark could interact with the Legion if needed to. He activates the device with the Legion flight ring, and after hearing a ding sound, Saturn Girl appears. Surprising Superman is calling her Imra, being that name hasn't been heard by her in a long time, not since she threw her parents into the murder pits of Metropolis. Clark immediately knows this is not the Saturn Girl he knows as she tries to break into his mental barriers. However, she can't get through right away, so she tells the hero that she is there to understand why Darkseid sees him as a threat. I quite like that Williamson is going this route with the Legion, only having one member appear at first and confront Superman. He's not going straight into the big fight where they gang up on him and fight him. Saturn Girl is here, she's trying to figure Superman out, trying to break down his mental barriers, kind of making him weak and trying to find some exploits in his armor. Very cool, very different than what I thought it was going to be. I thought it was literally just going to be them confronting Superman and they get into a big fight. Superman demands to know what Imra really is, but she tells him that she is indeed Saturn Girl from the 31st century, same one that she knows inspires Clark when he was Superboy. Williamson really writes Imra as very cruel here, and I really like it. It's a complete opposite than what she usually is. She's usually very plucky and very happy and positive, and here she's just a complete opposite, where she's very sadistic and hurtful. She does stuff like she calls the Legion and what they did to Superboy and inspiring him as corruption. And I like that she has this playful thing where she mentions, oh, where's Superboy and Lightning Lad? She knows full well where they are, but she's being very sarcastic and kind of playful and oh, they're about to hurt people. And she really likes knowing that Superman is about to know that. Just a neat little bit of character that sets her apart from the other Saturn Girl that we know and love. As Saturn Girl talks about Cosmic Boy and Lightning Lad, the other Legion members are outside the Justice League watchtower, with Lightning Lad wondering what Cosmic Boy is going to do to the station, thinking he's going to rip it apart or watch the heroes disappear into the cold vacuum of space. But Cosmic Boy has a much better idea, since the watchtower is a metal cage and metal is at his command. Using his powers, Cosmic Boy begins crushing the watchtower and Superman begins hearing his friends scream in terror as Mr. Terrific orders an evacuation. Superman speeds up to the station trying to contact Terrific, but Michael is crushed to death by the station as it implodes in on itself, setting Cosmic Boy a new record for most people he's killed at one time. Now this really took me by surprise, as it looks like everyone on the station is killed, including Mr. Terrific, who's actually killed there on the panel. We actually see him get crushed to death. Of course, this story involves time travel, alternate universes, etc., so I assume it's all going to be put back at the end as we move into the DC KO storyline. But man, that's a great opening to this arc. Superman is now all alone against three former friends. He can't, just call up the Legion and have them come and help. They're all gone. I bet it also helps the story too, you're kind of removing all of these factors like the Legion out of it. You can't literally call them up, they're all gone. They can't just swoop in at the last minute to help save them, and really they've got their own stuff to deal with over in the Justice League Unlimited book that also came out this week and is somewhat tangentially tied to this story as well. Superman arrives and uppercuts Cosmic Boy, calling him a monster, as Lightning Lad heads back down to Earth to meet Saturn Girl as they both descend on the Kent farm, finding Martha tending to her garden. Cosmic Boy tells Superman that this is all just the beginning and the Legion outnumber Superman and his friends. As Superman beats him around space, he gleefully tells Clark that the next phase of their plan is to break him. They're going to do it. Clark notices that the others are at the farm and speeds off to stop them, but it's too late as they blast Martha with electricity, killing her instantly. This causes Clark to fly into a rage, causing him to beat Lightning Lad to death before he realizes what is really going on. He snaps out of his rage and finds that none of what happened to the League or the station or his mother actually happened. It was all an illusion by Saturn Girl. Now this is a really cool reveal, and one I didn't want to spoil further up when I talked about Mr. Terrific dying, because obviously, they're not just going to kill off Mr. Terrific, the, breakout star of the new Superman movie. But I love how well it was sold, as we get a mention of Saturn Girl getting through Superman's mental defenses, and then she talks with him, getting to lure him into a false sense of security. Also, she can break down those defenses and get in without him ever noticing. Saturn Girl, taking much pleasure in Superman's torture, knows many people will break at this point, but not Superman, since he's pushing against her powers. She doubles down on her manipulation of his mind, entering Superman's memories to see the life he has lived, including his time with the Legion and how he even had a crush on Saturn Girl. Clark knows that she isn't the Saturn Girl he knew, making Imra realize that the Legion really meant something to him and none of what he does is an act. He really truly truly believes in hope and the people, making him Darkseid's direct opposite, and now she understands why Darkseid does not like him. As more memories play out around them, a Saturn Girl tells Superman that nothing he does will ever matter in the grand scheme of things, and every life he saves is meaningless, and while he was present for Darkseid's transformation and ascension, she is there for the place where Darkseid is the past, present, and future, since Darkseid is everything. Continuing to push into Clark's mind, Saturn Girl decides to lock him in a memory of his own mother dying over and over again, since it's better than being on whatever Darkseid has planned for the Earth when he returns. Now obviously the book can't actually reveal Darkseid's full plan right off the bat. It would be silly to think it would actually do that, but I think we do need a little bit more than Darkseid's coming back and he's now more powerful than a god, he's a literal creator of worlds, which we've basically gotten all through the teasing of him coming back. There were hints earlier in this issue of things like the murder pits of Metropolis being from the future, and I think we needed a little bit more of that peppered throughout, just hints of what Darkseid's going to turn the world into. Before Saturn Girl can trap Superman in his own mind, Time Trapper appears, ripping Saturn Girl from Superman's mind and teleporting away with the Man of Steel, lamenting how he warned him on what was coming and now they are all out of options. Something that really surprised me is what comes next, as we actually see Darkseid contact Saturn Girl, unhappy she decided to confront Superman since she was only meant to observe. This was really interesting because up until now we've been told Darkseid has died. We know he didn't. We know he became, the absolute universe, but we actually haven't seen him in any sort of physical form or do things like this where he's talking to people on the page. So for something like this to happen is kind of a big deal. What has he really become now? We know he creates the absolute universe, so he's above a god. He's more than what he usually becomes when he takes center stage in stories. So I'm excited to see if we'll actually see him have a physical form, or whether it will be something a bit more ethereal, or he's literally the universe or something. Darkseid demands that Imra return to him and gather the Legion, since there is another who could endanger his plans and she must protect them. Imra is pulled into the ground as if she is going to hell, which is a really damn cool visual that this ground swallows her up and then just returns to normal like nothing ever happened, and makes me question is Darkseid coming to Earth via hell? Is something to do with hell? Because obviously you associate the ground opening up with fire and brimstone swallowing this lady, you expect it to be representative of hell. So I have to imagine there's something there, because we do know Doomsday was eventually the ruler of hell for a time there. Doomsday factors very heavily into this storyline, being that Doomsday is Time Trapper. Is there some sort of connection there? I'm really looking forward to seeing if Williamson actually dives into that, whether he's the one to do it or whether Mark Waid is actually going to do it. But just from that visual alone, it feels like hell is involved in this in some way. Superman, meanwhile, demands to be sent back to help his mother, but Time Trapper doesn't care for her at all, which angers Superman greatly. Trapper says that Saturn Girl was indeed right and Martha would be better off dead if Darkseid does indeed return. So to save everyone from that fate, they need to save the future, and it's something Superman must do on his own. Trapper tells Superman about how the Legion found him and tortured him, but he managed to escape and return to the Watchtower with some of his allies in order to gather more and to look for help. Trapper takes Superman into Smallville, but not the one he knows, as he tells Superman that he and the others have to distract the Legion while Superman travels to the future. So finally we get some proper objectives for Superman that isn't just reacting to the things around him, and I'm looking forward to seeing who Trapper's other villains are. Surely he's gathered some heroes and villains from throughout the multiverse. We're kind of seeing that already over in the Justice League Unlimited book, where there's heroes from the multiverse trapped on Earth at the moment because of what Grodd did with the Omega energy. So I wonder if it's connected to them, whether they are the ones who are Time Trapper's people, or whether he has some actual well-known people coming back into the comics after a long time, because we saw the World Forger, maybe Monitor, maybe Anti-Monitor, who knows. I'm sure it's going to be covered in this week's Justice League Unlimited book, which I have yet to read as of this recording. As Superman looks around town, he finds it's not like any Smallville he knows, and Trapper reveals that this is a pocket dimension, one he made outside of the timeline and the known multiverse, where he could hide an important part of Superman's story, since someone from another era he knew he could help has been living there and they have experience with the Legion. This person is none other than Superboy Prime, who confronts Superman and asks if he's ready to kill some nerds. So this was kind of a big shock. I kind of knew about this actually weeks ago, but I didn't have any confirmation that it was happening. I heard it from some people who know some things, but I took that as like, oh yeah, maybe he comes back as like a cameo or something. You know, we see him in like the background of one of these multiverse shots. But nope, he's coming back fully, and I love how exciting and wonderful it is. I have wanted to see Superboy Prime ever since his happy ending in Death Metal, and I'm wondering if Williamson is going to honor that ending he got in Death Metal, because he had like kind of a final ending in that series. He got what he wanted. He got like a universe where he could actually be the hero for once, and it was a nice, you know, well-earned ending as well. And I guess this is where we are. This like little universe is like the one he's protecting, and the way he comes across is kind of a good guy, kind of a bad guy. He's talking about killing people, but the people he's trying to kill are, you know, warped versions of future people who don't technically exist yet. So maybe he's like a hero. I guess probably anti-hero is probably going to be the best way to describe Superboy Prime. But I'm really looking forward to that dynamic between Superman and Superboy Prime again. It's been a while since we had that, and I cannot wait for it. It's such an awesome cliffhanger to end out on. Superman issue 28 thrust us right into the Absolute Legion event, all leading to the big DC KO series later this year. While I think we needed a few more teasers and little tidbits of Darkseid's plans strewn throughout this series and maybe even in the Justice League Unlimited book, I really like where we are headed with this story. The Absolute Legion are perfect evil inverses for Superman to fight. You know, they're the perfect people to get under Superman's skin since they've known him longer than even Lex Luthor has. So I'm intrigued to see how Williamson is going to deploy them, since he used Saturn Girl, especially in this issue, really well. I like that it played to her strength, those mental manipulation. I'm intrigued to see if each member will get sort of their one-on-one with Superman at some point. The final page reveal with Superboy Prime making a big return to the timeline was real surprising and really exciting, and I'm hoping Williamson has a bit of a meaty story for him chewing and isn't just bringing him back just for the sake of member berries. I'm going to give this issue an 8.5 out of 10.